The decisions we've made since we've been married have always been for our kids.
We got married and decided to start our family, and once we had Henry, it was important for me to be home with him. Almost 2.5 years later, we had Cooper. It was the four of us together all the time, playing, laughing. There was a lot of joy in our house. And I was home with them, and we did so many fun things every day, and I was really, really grateful and lucky that we were in that position. We had like a big party with all of our friends and their kids at the park, and Cooper was running around like a maniac, like with all the 2-year-olds. About 2 weeks later, we were having lunch, and he threw up. And I kind of chalked it up to, well, he's probably got a stomach bug. We had like no idea. And I called John, I said, come home, we have to go to pediatric urgent care. So John stayed in the waiting room, and I went back with him, and he couldn't stand up on the scale. The kid who was running and jumping the day before, his lamps were totally fine. Everything was fine. And they told us at that point, there's nothing else we can do here. We want to send him to Children's. I remember the nurse checking his pupils the whole time we were in the ambulance, and at one point they were pinpoints. And I said, why are his pupils like that? He was having a seizure at that moment. After his MRI that night, we were told that he had to have an immediate craniotomy. Within that night, he had so much brain damage that the next time we saw him out of surgery, he was never himself again. He eventually was diagnosed with a CNS neuroblastoma, which was only in his brain. We put him in this medically induced coma to try to help reduce the swelling, and that took about 2 weeks. It was very hard to see him go through that, and I kept thinking about all the families that their kids did go on to further treatment, that it goes on for years for some families. And once the pathology was back and we met with oncology, they were very honest with us, and it was hard to hear, but there was no further treatment for him. It's hard to understand and think until you have kids. You can kind of imagine it, but you know, once you have that baby, it's all you strive to do.
Yeah.
At one point, he was suffering, and we couldn't watch him suffer anymore. We did what we had to do, and you know, he passed in the hospital. We decided not to take him home. It was absolutely the worst day of our lives.
There's not anything worse that could happen to a family, to a person. I mean, cancer in kids just shouldn't happen, but unfortunately, it does, and it happens to us.
After your child passes in the hospital, they help you pack your car, and you get in the car, but this time it's without your child, and the car seat's empty. You're driving home, and you think, I'm going home to a whole new family. Yeah. I'm going home to a whole new life.
I remember sitting there, and I looked at Ashley and I said, oh my gosh, I should text Gwen at P.U.N.T. So I texted Gwen, who I, had a professional relationship with before. Yeah. And I remember sending that text to Gwen, and we just talked about what was going on.
John did a lot with P.U.N.T, and I would go with him to this stuff. And I remember being touched by the story, and I just never in a million thousand years at that moment thought, John and I are gonna get married and we're gonna have 2 boys, and then our 2.5-year-old is gonna get sick with a brain tumor, and we're gonna be on the other side of this organization. When your kid is sick, no matter what age they are, that's your number one job, is to be there with them. And that's what is so unique, I feel like, truthfully, about P.U.N.T, is they don't only financially directly help the parents, the families, and the kids, they also provide all of the emotional support that you don't necessarily get at the hospital, and you definitely don't get after you leave the hospital. If you want to help the families in this area, directly, this is the way you do it, we know absolutely firsthand.